Glass Animals Dreamland. It is 16 songs long, 45 minutes long, and by 16, there's a ton of little skits.
There's a lot of little skits and literally home videos of the band members and stuff going through it.
Yeah, you'd say it's more like 12 songs.
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with this album.
Interesting.
Because I've heard of Glass Animals a little bit here and there. They're kind of like your uber modern band group, as I like to call it, where it's just if you put the sounds of like the late 2010s, 2020s in your ears, that's what you would hear and stuff like in malls or whatever. Like that's kind of like the sound you would get, but it's a little bit more obscure than that.
Basically, everything that started iterating off of M83's "Hurry Up, We're Dreaming," where it's like sort of dreamy synth pop, but not too poppy. More alternative, but definitely not alternative. Like,
definitely. Yeah, a lot like Midnight City is a good.
Yeah,
is a good.
That's
thing.
why I said derivative, because it's not quite as good as the whole thing, but it's all like kind of trying to.
Yeah, and then with here they did the thing of a few like alternative bands where they try a lot of trap in it, and I think the trap, like you said with Amine, when some of these artists try trap, they either try too hard and then it just becomes flat where it literally sounds repetitive, and those are the trap songs that happen on this album. That happens like Tangerine, which is the second song on this album. I fucking hate that song, honestly, because the first song, Dreamland, it kind of gets you into it, and I'm like, okay, I may end up liking this album. It goes to Tangerine, which is basically just a trap mix into a song. I'm like, it's flat. Luckily,
it's like trap pop.
Yeah, and then luckily, Hot Sugar, they go more into that kind of dream pop, synth pop into it. I'm like, okay, I like that a lot. And it gets like this back and forth between that, because you have Space Ghost, Coast to Coast, which is kind of more of like your trap and B-ish song, and then you have Tokyo Drifting, Denzel Curry, which the first half of that song is absolute ass, and the second half of that song is actually really good.
Denzel Curry's part saves it.
Yeah, he does completely save that song, because the first half, the vocals in it are really bad, and there's a lot of the production in it that's bad, and then it gets good with Denzel Curry. The funny thing is once you get to more of the middle of the album, you have two songs that are amazing. You have Waterfalls Coming Out of Your Mouth, and It's So Incredibly Loud, which are some of my favorite synth pop songs that have come out in a long time. Up there with like this year of like the Naked and Famous kind of style, where I really like it because the themes of those two songs are incredible. You have Waterfalls Coming Out of Your Mouth, which is about the first like 2 to 3 months of a relationship you're putting on a front to somebody. So you're like trying to project someone that you want them to like, but not necessarily yourself. And it's this funny like song and dance that you hear, and it's 100% true when you're in a relationship. Yeah. You like put on this front of trying to be before they get to really know the real you. As 21 Savage says, "Would you have slept with the poor me?" It's like that, just trying to get into that song and dance of going in between that. And I really like that because not too many people go into that theme like we talked about with Amine's album. Because I said that's something similar that Glass Animals do, because not many people talk about like the fakeness that starts in that beginning part of a relationship until you get to the meat and potatoes of your relationship, and then you get to get more comfortable with one another.
Yeah. Breaking news: a lot of music is hard to escape about themes of love.
Oh, for sure.
There are so many themes of love that are like trodden upon by every single artist, and then there are certain times
stuff which we complain about.
Yeah, and then there are certain times where artists pick on themes in love that are like a little bit less thought of, or a little bit more subversive, or even like socially or politically controversial. Less so with this than Amine, but still, like, there are parts that aren't trodden over all the time that artists can explore and build like deeper songs into, and that's the part we enjoy.
And then the cool thing too is the song right after that, It's So Incredibly Loud, is something that I've never really heard artists talk about, which is the little pause you have right after and right before you give someone really bad news. So it's kind of like that awkward thing when you're just the person who's going to say really bad news, like example, like, oh, like your so-and-so passed away, or you didn't get the job, whatever it is. That little bit of you like preparing to say it is like the worst 10 seconds ever. Yeah. And then the pause in between that, like just waiting for their emotions, like that quick 3-5 seconds of them just standing there waiting to process it, is such an incredibly hard emotion. And that's where the song is, It's So Incredibly Loud, because it's a loud quiet where it speaks so much volumes of how silent it is because of, wait, what just happened? We had this, like Dan and I had this especially when he told me that Michael Brooks passed away. Like, I got that text and there was an incredibly loud silence of me just sitting there like, what just happened?
I know the full thing because you were playing Valorant or something on my computer I was looking at my phone when everyone I knew was like, what happened with Michael Brooks? Because then we're all learning about it in real time. And so I'm like, at what point do I get myself together before I tell Sean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's definitely
and that's such a good thing that I don't remember hearing this on a song at all. And I think it's such a good thing because it's really hard to project into a song, but I really like the production of that song and the lyrics in it. So this is a funny album because there's parts of this album that are absolute ass, and there's parts of this album that are incredible, and I haven't heard many musical artists do it.
Yeah, there are parts of this album that are definitely like hit or miss, or like it might, maybe that was, let me complete my thoughts. There are parts of this album that are hit or miss in that it depends on your particular
taste and stuff.
Particular taste,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the thing I was going to accidentally jump over my own thoughts with is that maybe that was kind of Glass Animal's point in what you were saying, and that they are just like the band, they're the mall background music band of the 2010s that isn't totally terrible. But of course, they're going to make a little bit of something that appeals to everyone. A little bit of the trap, a little bit of the heady shit.
But you can tell how talented they are, too, in this. Because it's not like they're just like Carly Rae Jepsen or something who... people say she's talented. I don't think she is. Of just like random music in the background that you can put on, like pop music, and you're like, okay, it's whatever. Yeah, inoffensive pop music. But with them, it's like you can tell there's the inoffensive pop music, the inoffensive like alternative artists trying to make trap, and then there's this good clean, wholesome substance that we love here on Audioface of just wow, that's art. So it's mixing of all of it, which is hard to do. But the one good thing they do is they make it cohesive in the album. They make every song fits together in that regard. Even though there's songs I do not like, there's a lot of stuff where you can feel that this whole album is complete in that regard. And even their little skits, even the little home movie stuff, maybe towards the end it got a little much, but I kind of liked it in between because it told more of a story.
I think what I'm learning about, I've never done like an aside on skits, but there's like a bit of time so I can. I think an artist, when you use a skit, it's kind of a accessible but kind of cheap way to break up your album. Because if you're really good, these songs break up the album in itself. The songs just take you on a ride and you just don't worry about it. But some albums and some artists need skits to sort of like, to continue the analogy, like change the gears.
Literally, like Bishop Nehru, that may be one of my only complaints of his music, is sometimes he literally has to cut it in between two. Granted, sometimes it's two different producers, but most of his albums, he'll like literally say, this is part 2 of the album. It's like, okay,
well,
like...
I'll say like it's skits are a tool. If you don't use them at all and you manage not to do it, like that just shows how good you are at
like
the craft.
Tame Impala this year,
if you do, even Tame Impala gets creative with the skits in almost like a chuk way, where you build them in, not skits per se, but like you build them into the song.
Yeah.
But like Gorillaz, for example, there have been
like humans.
Like Plastic Beach, kind of like the skits are built into the song, like
Pirate Jet.
Pirate Jet's at the end, but like to binge Cloud of Unknowing and Pirate Jet go in really well
Yeah,
together.
that's true, because Cloud of Unknowing has like that little skit in between, like at the beginning of it, and it flows into it. Yeah, I can see.
Long story short, if you are going to use a skit, if you're a musician, you're going to use a skit, and an album that's like standard 2020 size, like 35 to 50 minutes long, maybe use 2 or 3, because those are the only kind of ways you should be like blaring off the horns to people that you're making a transition in your album. Because when you do 4 or 5, and yeah, maybe it's themed, but it's still like, okay, you're taking this theme and breaking
like
the
that was my
theme. Why aren't the songs reminding me of the theme?
And that was my big complaint of Logic, is Logic does that a lot on his album. That was on every single goddamn song. I'm like, yo,
that's just like self-adulation.
Yeah, at that point. Yeah. It just, I'm like, that really threw me off in that regard.
As we wind down, what'd you think about Helium?
Helium, I liked a lot as an ending track. I think, because that was my one where I said I wish it went to Heatwave straight to Helium. I wish there wasn't a skit there. I think the other skits were actually fine. I really liked one between It's So Incredibly Loud and Domestic Bliss. I think there needed to be one between those, because those 2 songs right before Domestic Bliss were so powerful and like introspective compared to Domestic Bliss. But I think Heatwave and Helium would have been, like, the 2 endings would have been a lot better without that skit in it. I think it would have landed a lot softer. This isn't one of those landings where you skip a little bit, but you don't like, nothing pops out of your carry-on bag. It's a first officer's like 3rd landing, like 3rd landing of a day, and so he's like tired. It's his first, like, maybe first time trying a 747.
First time at O'Hare.
Yeah, first time at O'Hare. Fuck that airport. 22L sucks at O'Hare. That's so loud.
Flight Simulator intensifies.
Oh my God, we get that in 2 weeks.
So close. Okay.
I'm not gonna leave this house.
Arbitrary Scale. This week, as we said, are subdivisions of the multinational Chinese corporation Tencent. I'm going to say this is the distribution deal that Tencent has with EA Sports. It's in the game with NBA 2K and FIFA Online, where they just distribute the EA games there. Where they take a little bit of everything. Hey, this is kind of popular.
Microtransactions, man.
We'll send it to you. Some of you will like it. Some of you will be the bane of your existence. But hey, it's EA. You'll keep coming back.
To me, this is Rocket League. This is like Rocket League. Part of that distribution of it, because Rocket League, like you can play Rocket League for about 30 to 40 minutes and you kind of get tired of it. But when Rocket League first started, oh, you loved that shit. You played that shit all the time. It was so much fun, especially when it went cross-platform.
Yeah. It's one of those good pickup games. Like,
oh yeah, when you have like nothing else to play and you're just like, hey, we need to play a game or something. Rocket League is always a great filler when you're waiting for something to download.